Welcome back to the Virtual Antics podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Guzman, and today I have Aasha with me, who is a certified emotional and energetics intelligence facilitator and keynote speaker. Welcome, Aasha. I'm glad to have you on the show.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, same here. I'm so excited today because I really haven't interviewed anyone like you on my show. So I'm really excited because you are kind of expert in emotional intelligence. Is that correct?
Yes, I've been studying the ins and outs of emotional intelligence for the last almost 6 years, like very intricately. There's 26 areas and I study all of them. And then also energetic intelligence as well.
Awesome. So what can you explain a little bit more about like what it is and how we can utilize that in our life and in our business?
100%. It is literally the crux for all life. It represents the right and the left hemisphere of the brain. And as your audience tends to really lean toward that entrepreneurial template of person, that is actually the number one indicator of a self-made millionaire. 90% of self-made millionaires, entrepreneur millionaires, have one link in common, and it's emotional regulation. So emotional intelligence regulates emotions. And then my energetic work, which is not spiritual, it's not woo-woo, it's nothing like that. That's all a lie. Moves it much, much faster. So we get to the root of the problem much quicker, which means more alignment to everything you desire faster.
Oh, that's really cool. And so interesting that you said most entrepreneurs are like that. That's so cool. So what are like some of the things that we can do to, utilize it to its most potential?
Yeah, well, first, I think is the understanding and the knowing that if you are an entrepreneur, or well, really everybody is on like the path to finding themselves. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're saying, oh, this is my soul's work. I'm here to serve people. And that means like a lot of facing yourself. And like, if you're listening and you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It's hardcore. You're like, make this work. What do I do next? With emotional intelligence, it's really about taking the actual time to feel through the emotion instead of just like rushing and running into the next thing. It's just about feeling through the emotion as opposed to freaking out and just taking a ton of aligned action, because that's what's going to burn you out. So in particular for women, this is vital. 80% of the way we operate is in our emotions. So moving through the emotions and taking the time to do that is actually going to align you faster.
Wow, really interesting. So,
Yeah.
you were saying that, like, so emotional intelligence, when you were talking about it, it was really brought me back to like living in the present moment, which is something I've been talking about a lot in my show lately, is that like not only living in that present moment, but like feeling it, like feeling those emotions. Now, do you think it's more looking back and, settling on those emotions, or are you kind of using the emotions in your presence?
Oh, that's a great question. So first and foremost, I think it's important to know as well that people are always say things like energy is everything.
Mhm.
Energy is your trauma. It's your limiting beliefs in the stories that you have around like your own worth and the success that you have. So for example, if you're a woman that might be having a difficult time pricing her packages or her offers, she may find herself like getting frustrated with getting on phone calls or annoyed with her clients, like putting pressure on her clients, when the reality is it's her own self-worth. And so I think when you're asking that question, there's a couple things. Number one, when you feel through the emotion, you actually become more present. You get out of your head and you get into your body. So many women have such a difficult time coming into their womanhood, and like even men, we get into our analytical minds because we want to try to explain everything, when the reality is this is a game of about 80% to 90% how we feel. So it's a combination of both. The emotion won't come up now if there's not something there for you to clear around it, and it may be a story in the past. So when you cry in the now and you like feel it or feel angry or mad or frustrated, get the whole feeling out because the insight's on the other side.
You know, when you were talking, I just thought about my team. So I run a marketing agency and a virtual assistant agency, and we're all about the teamwork, right? And so, how are some ways that we can help our employees and our team with their emotional intelligence and supporting them?
Oh, I love that question. Well, as a leader, it's important to know that you're the problem. It always comes back to the leader. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, really, the best way to empower your team is to give them that leader mindset and the same skills that you do to improve your own leadership, you do with them. So, a good example is if myself and one of my team members are having a bit of a conflict, as opposed, not a conflict, but something that we're trying to navigate, which comes up especially in heart-led businesses and like businesses that are conscious. You're going to have to feel through the stuff if you want to do right by your employees. And when that happens, it's important to like take a minute and really respect that, and then ask and receive perspective from their point of view, because you want to teach them to use the same tools, which is flipping it in and like using everything as a mirror, as opposed to like blaming other people or always coming up with excuses. It's like, what's my role in that scenario?
So interesting, because so we have a situation that a lot of times, you know, we have a lot of clients that are very busy and in a million places at once. And then they come to my staff are trying to deal with them, and there's a disconnect. I think a lot of the times, like you said, it kind of goes down to like the self-worth and like knowing that, you know, that your employees are important and they are amazing at what they do, even though the clients make them feel like they're not. And so
Yeah.
I think that's really important for us as leaders to step in and be like, you know, you are doing absolutely amazing and you are doing it all correct. And, you know, I always say, like, this is just a moment, you know, this is not a reflection on all of the work that you've done. It's just literally just a moment and there's just some disconnect with this client and we just figure out a way to get through that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so tell me more. What are other ways that we can really like maximize our emotional intelligence potential, if that's the right way to word it?
Yeah. So amazing. Like, really good question. So one thing to really kind of get your head around is that 80% of the way we make decisions is through our emotional intelligence. It runs about 80% of how we behave and who we are. So when we use that knowing, it's almost like your right side of the brain controls about 80% of your stuff. But 20%, the 20% is so loud that we overthink things. And so I think in order to exercise it, it's really about I like to start my meetings off with gratitude and like things that I enjoy about the people that I'm with that instantly like raises the vibe. And then I'll actually share with them something that maybe happened on the weekend that made me feel vulnerable, or maybe made me feel like I messed up, or whatever the case. I mean, I'm always teaching and talking anyway, so my team's always listening to me tell these crazy stories. Um, and when you're able to be in that place of vulnerability, then there is a closeness that happens. Other people begin to feel that way. And so when you look into emotional intelligence in the 26 areas, some of them include empathy, integrity, resilience, adaptability. So what we do in my team is we'll pick one area and we will work on that one area for like a week or two at a time, and then so on and so forth. It's so awesome and it's so much fun, and that's like how we grow. We do leadership training on Thursdays, and so a couple of my team members are from different countries and they're like virtual assistants, but I'm training them to be leaders and lead a team.
That's awesome, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad you're doing that, especially, you know, that was my first business was a virtual assistant agency, and I started
Oh,
out as
wow.
VA myself, yeah, and
Cool.
so now I have my core team, then I have all the virtual assistants, but I think it's really important to, you know, they're still part of your team, and to, like, give them that knowledge and that background, and, like, we teach them about all the basics of business because most VAs don't have that, so it's actually a weakness that a lot of VAs have is they don't understand terms like ROI, and they don't understand, discovery calls and consultations and automations, and we kind of teach them all of that. And I feel like it gives them that boost of confidence.
Mhm.
It's like I feel like everything that we try to teach actually helps their emotional intelligence, because
Yeah,
you want to give them confidence, you want to give them, understanding, so they're able to relate to the client. Because I
yeah.
think the worst thing for clients sometimes is they just feel like their VA doesn't get them. And a lot of
Mhm.
times that's just how we train our, our employees, our staff, our VAs, whoever, is just like, I think the training is really important, that we're also involving the emotional intelligence into our training is such a really cool, unique aspect that more businesses need these days.
Oh my gosh, yeah, 1000%. I like it's interesting. I teach this to teams, and it's the cool thing about EQ is that it can be really like, oh my gosh, I have no idea who I am, and I've never heard of emotional intelligence, and what do I want in my life? Or I can work with people that are like, I see demons every night, and I'm pretty sure I have magical powers. And I'm like, oh, okay, perfect. I totally understand all of those spectrums because I am all those spectrums. In my life, I've had a huge amount of trauma in a very short period of time. The last 2 years have been very, very difficult. Like a lot of really, I was even sexually assaulted twice in the last 2 years. And so this has been a very, and plus a divorce and a job loss. I'm kind of proving my work that it is the fastest way to move through trauma. And so the cool thing is that I teach that, and then I teach women's embodiment, like sexual energy and femininity, and in unlocking their gifts. So it's a really awesome way to like find out where your team is, because you got to remember, like every single person is usually having like their own journey, whatever that looks like for them. And sometimes that means like the most random person on your team has like a crystal collection, and so emotional intelligence just brings out the acceptance of every single type of character in the big play of life, if you will. I love it.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I'm an SA survivor myself. And so it was just really interesting to me, because it's so hard for us to work through the whole emotional trauma that we receive, and that you specialize in it. And I think that's like such a cool thing and so amazing. I'm so proud of you, because I've done like exposure therapy and things like that, and where you literally have to live through each emotion, each moment, everything. It's the hardest thing I ever did in my life, but the
Yeah.
feeling that you have once you work through those things is like you did that. Like you're so
Yeah.
strong, you're amazing, and it's really cool what you can do when you just really wanna, you sit down and you work on yourself.
Hey, Asha. So we had some computer issues. So that's why we have this little pause here in the podcast, because my computer completely crashed on me. Life happens, but I'm so glad you came back so we could finish this episode, because we left off on like a really interesting point where we just both kind of talked about, our history, and then about how, you're using emotional intelligence, and like that's really deep work. And the fact that, you went through such traumatic event. And I know I kind of talked about, like I went through oh, what was it? I went through some like PTSD training where I had to like really think about it and live in that moment and be present. And it was hard. Do you find like that it was really hard at first and then freeing, or what was your kind of emotional experience with it?
Oh, that's such a good question. The thing is about trauma, is that it is ongoing. You're going to continue to clear as you move forward, regardless. So you can either do that with emotional and energetic intelligence, which will speed you up and you will get to where you want to go much faster, or you can do it naturally. And naturally usually means coming in the form of a wake-up call. Or stifling your soul and like never reaching what you really deserve in abundance, as far as money and also as far as love. So many people are walking around, as I mentioned, in like trauma bonds where there is no intimacy in their relationship, or like withholding intimacy from one another. And so when you're talking about my personal experience, I go right for the jugular. I don't look at trauma as something that's scary. It's about having a relationship like a long-term relationship with emotions. So in the moment we get really caught up, or we're like, oh, okay, I'll just clear this and then I'll be done. What I think the best thing that I can advise to people is to really come to peace and terms with the fact that it's never going to stop. It's not a bad thing. It's just part of life. Emotions are going to happen. Trauma is going to come up to be cleared. And that's why I strongly advise everybody do emotional intelligence and energetics work, because it makes it move faster. So my experience now after all of this work is deeper sexual energy, deeper femininity, relaxation. I don't get mad or triggered. I used to have a plaguing fear of not having enough money, and that's pretty much completely gone. I've had $4 in my bank and 500,000, and it just doesn't matter. It's always going to come when you maintain emotional regulation. So yeah, the trauma is really, it can be difficult in the moment. Of course, emotions feel so heavy in the moment, especially if you've had a really traumatic event. But the truth is that you can escape it and you can free yourself. And that's where you want to be. And the knowing that it's going to keep happening. And the more you do it, the more resilient you will become.
Wow. And that's so deep. And, they always say, you want to kill yourself so you can be, a good mom or a good business owner. And I'm like, really, we need to heal ourselves for us, because we deserve that. And I think, especially when you go through something like we've gone through, your sense of value, there you come to a point where you're like, man, maybe I'm not worth it, or I'm not worth this. And, you lack the confidence. And I feel like emotional intelligence really helps you heal that. You find out you are worthy, to take those steps to heal yourself. So,
Yes.
And it's hard and it's a struggle. It's emotional. I think the hardest part for me was when I was kind of going through the main part of my healing journey. I sought help because I was having really bad nightmares all the time. It was affecting me as a mom because I'd be cranky and lashing out at my children. And even with my relationship, of course. And so I was just like, you really have to take that step and, put yourself out there. And it caused more nightmares. I got worse before I got better. Is that the same way with emotional intelligence?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm sorry that you had to experience all that. This is very true. And the way I'm looking at that and just reading that in your energy is that it was indeed just like you can say like curse or hex if you want to go to like a really high truth, or you can say it was just an emotion that was stuck in your energy. Yeah. So I think I mentioned in the first half of the program, your energy is your trauma. So many people walk around being like, oh, energy is everything. Your vibe is your tribe. But people don't really go into the depths of understanding that your energy is your trauma. Everything is stemmed in what we're attached to. So when you're talking about that experience, it is emotional intelligence is the key to detachment. It's the key to everything. It's like the basis of the entire world because it's masculine and feminine energy. And so when we begin to balance those two areas of our life, everything moves into alignment. So yeah, I think there's like you touched on self-worth and what you shared. You will never reach your heightened place if you don't believe that you're worthy of it. Mm-hmm. And we have what we call initiations into that all the time. So if you're listening and you're an entrepreneur, you may be like behind closed doors or to your husband, be like, I'm definitely charging $5,000 for this program. I'm charging $5,000 for this program. Like I totally deserve it. And then you get on the call and your fears start kicking in and your worth starts kicking in and like, oh my God, what if I lose this sale? Next thing you know, what was a gridlocked payment plan of only 2 payments is now a payment plan of $500 a month because you're desperate for this woman to come into your program. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to that. And so the ideal is to like get yourself separated from that in your worth. And you do that with energetic intelligence, because again, it's the detachment work.
Yeah. And, I experienced that right now. Everyone tells me, raise your prices. My team tells me all the time. And especially because we do it for you services. And I think that I've talked about it on a couple episodes. It's so hard because you're so scared to lose out on that potential client. but you're also limiting yourself to the other clients that you could be having that, one, are probably going to cause you less issues. They
Yeah.
won't be, you know, they're so busy. They just want you to handle it, and they won't be like on top of you 24/7. They're going to pay you what you're worth, and they're also going to respect you more. I did
For
find
sure.
when we raised our prices that I was actually respected a lot more and then seen as an expert because I wasn't charging the minimum prices.
There you go. Exactly. And so if we're talking about that in an energy capacity, it's holding the frequency of your worth. And the holding of the frequency is the hardest part. So let's say you increase your program from like 700 to 2000. There's going to be an energetic shift where the $700 people have to leave your energy field and the $2,000 people come toward your energy field. So you're saying to yourself every day, I'm getting $2,000. I'm getting $2,000. I'm getting $2,000. Well, what happens between the 700 and 2000 is a let's say a month passes, or even 2 months. Now you're in that 2-month period and you're like, shit, this isn't working. Oh my God, the world hates me. Everything's burning down. And like God or source is actually like, no, Natalie, I'm adjusting everything so that you receive that. Don't go back to that place. But we end up going back to that place, shooting ourselves in our own abundance foot.
Yeah, it's so true, because it is scary. You know, it's kind of the same thing with trauma. You have to keep going forward. You can't go back. And it's so funny. I always relate my business to you know, I don't even call it trauma. I really just call it an event that happened in my life.
Yeah.
Because trauma has so much, like you said, negative energy, right, attached to it. And it's actually now has positive because I've healed. I've taken those steps to really get past it. And now it's just an event, just like foster care. That was an event in my life, and so on and so forth. And so I always relate my business to that moment. And I'm just like, you know, you just got to keep forward, keep pushing, and you got to hold yourself worthy, you know?
100%. And, you know, my mentality from the push mentality to the inward mentality has changed my entire life. I spent 80% of my time doing inward work, and it's like very deep inward devotional practice of energetics. And I will never be without it, because women in particular, we're so emotional. We are emotional beings by nature. That's where we represent the love frequency. So the deeper we go into deep love, the more magnetic we become for exactly what it is that we desire in our life.
That is amazing. Well, I'm so thankful you were able to share all that with our listeners. I hope they benefited from it as much as I did. Where can they find you?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. So it's Aasha T on Facebook. I have Aasha_T_international on Instagram. I have a private group as well on Facebook where I do a lot of sexual energy and working in the womb and cervix and pussy, like all this beautiful energy around the sexual energy of receiving. And so if you come and find me on Facebook, you can just request that and come and join there. You'll see it on my stories. And then if you're into business vibes and more into helping teams and yourself in your own business, you can find me on LinkedIn. And I run an amazing group for women where we do everything energetics, and it's all about like stepping into your confidence. You're who you are. And I have a consulting background, so I help my clients with that if they desire.
Awesome. That's so cool. I'll make sure to link all that in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I've had so much fun.
Thank you so much. Awesome, Natalie. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day, guys.